Yes, indeed, it is AM Live, and many thanks indeed for joining us this morning. It is the 21st of June 2018, and we have a lot lined up for you today. We'll be turning our focus today on housing Kenya and how we can have access to affordable housing in this country. And of course, also we know the budget estimates were read just last week. So what does it portend also with the National Housing Fund? Many questions have been raised about the 2 or the 0.5% that of course will be taxed to from Wananchi. We have our guests already here in studio, waking up very early. All right, we have Mr. Mwangi from KWFT, and of course also we do have with us as well Samuel Minor. We'll be giving you more of the profiles much later in the course of the program. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. Right, so that is what we'll be doing this morning, discussing housing. So you can also head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV also is our profile name on Facebook, and 20505 is our SMS portal. Right, I don't have my soft copy with me this morning because of some technical challenges, but I'll walk over to my laptop where it is right now to just show you what we do have on the headlines, the Daily Nation, the Business Daily, and of the Standard and the Star as well, so that at least you can get a hint of what is happening this morning as far as the dailies are concerned. So this is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. As I've mentioned, I have the hard copy, so this is what I'll show you. Face behind the sugar. This is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation today. Inside empire that decides how sweet your tea is. This is the king of sweet, Mr. Jaswant Rai, chairman of the powerful empire that owns a string of sugar factories in Western. MPs say he imported 185 million kilos of it. His farm says, yeah, but it is good, safe sugar. You have his story on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Ronaldo, Manu bounced, or bundle I should say, out of Morocco. This is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation, page 52, carrying the dreams of Portugal almost single-handedly in Russia. Lethal striker lives up to his billing with the fastest goal of the World Cup yet against Lions of Atlas. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Also, audit finds bad maize in stores. Food infected with aflatoxin could soon find its way into your kitchen after an internal audit revealed state bought infected harvest. Of course, we've been discussing about this still. We can have it also still on the front page of the Daily Nation today. This is just appalling, and this is also well fleshed out for you on page 5 of the Daily Nation today. Geritas unable to raise 5 million shillings for bail, with the accounts frozen as government tries to recover assets. NYS scam suspects still in remand despite being granted bail. That story, you can follow it on page 3 of the Daily Nation today. Also, I can account for my money, Ruto declares. Deputy President William Ruto welcomes Kenyatta's proposal for lifestyle audit of senior government officials, saying willing to explain source of wealth. Also, Raila Party targets Jumwa in shake-up. Orange Democratic Movement starts process to remove rebel Malindi MP from Parliamentary Service Commission. You have that story well fleshed out for you on page 6 of the Daily Nation today. All right, let's see what we have. Holding the front page of the Standard, they know secrets of the sugar barons and the world. The unfolding story of sweet sugar has exposed glaring gaps in the enforcement of standards to protect the health of Kenyans and assurance the taxman gets his due on it. It has also brought into focus the men who should know the real barons. And you have this story on page 6 of the Standard this morning. The first is also spread on the front page of the Daily Nation, not really related directly to, of course, the sugar barons, but we have, says Matangi, his cabinet docket includes all security surveillance units that keep track of all criminal activities and reports directly to the president. He told Kenyans the sugar had mercury. Also, CS Eden, his ministry includes the manufacturing industries that are heavy consumers of sugar, and he is the one who told the country yesterday no traces of mercury were found. And of course, this flies in the face of what the DCI had said, that yes, according to their test, they have elements of mercury or copper or heavy metals left with or in the sugar that is in the market currently. Some, of course, of the bags of sugar that we have in the market. So we have their faces there. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. A quick look now at what we do have on the front page of the Star. So Swazuri bought dubious SGR plots. This is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. Overruled. NLC chairman ignored subcommittee decision that plot titles be revoked, it says. NLC paid 314 million shillings of Kenya Railways money for 5 plots on railway reserves. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star today. I'm ready for lifestyle audit, says Deputy President William Ruto. And also Kenya Railway MD Atanas Baina can be seen here with the National Lands Commission Chairman Mohamed Swazuri after meeting Senate Committee yesterday. And this is a related picture to what is headlining the front page of the Star this morning. The Business Daily is holding this particular splash for you today. Nakumatt CEO faces probe in 18 billion shillings theft, it says. Court-appointed administrator says massive stock write-off does not add up. That story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily today. Chess Bank couple in fresh for charges is another story, a sidebar story there on the front page of the Business Daily. And borrowers get credit score, I should say, to negotiate cost of loans. That story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily today. You can follow that. I want to show you also what we do have on the front page of The Economist. This is the latest edition, why softer is better and ever more literally. This is Kim Jong won the art of holo deal. That is what we have on the front page of The Economist, the latest edition. And also, if you are an avid fan of nature, maybe you do love also the National Geographic. And this is Planet or Plastic, a probing question on the front page of the latest edition of the National Geographic magazine. 18 billion pounds of plastic end up in the ocean each year. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Plastic aren't inherently bad. It's what we do or don't do with them that counts. This is what Sylvia Al is saying, the National Geographic Explorer in residence. You can grab a copy of that as well for those riveting stories. I will be showing you much later in the course of the program also the editorial cartoons that we do have in our dailies today. But for now, let's swing for the fences as always by looking at the highlights. Sugar Cartel Country will give you all the gritty details of the latest flying in the face comment from the CS. And lifestyle audit, Deputy President is ready to go through the testing. And the South Sudan crisis meeting in Ethiopia begins. Hello, good morning, I'm Debarl Inea. Now, Majority Leader in the National Assembly, Eden Duale, says Cabinet Secretary for Finance, Henry Rotich, should be held responsible for the contraband sugar influx in the country. In an exclusive interview with NTV's Seth Olale, the Garissa Town legislator has also faulted Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i for unfairly targeting small-scale wholesalers, while the real culprits enjoy state protection.
Blankets go down. It is in JB minor go downs in Mombasa. It is in Riply and Tim Cells in Nairobi. It is in Sukari Industries in Diwa. So, my question I'm asking is, why are we chasing few wholesalers who don't import sugar, parade them in front of the media, and you are not going to these said go-downs? Under what circumstance were this Gazette notice given? Was the East Africa Council of Ministers for Finance, were they consulted? Because the Minister for Finance of Kenya cannot give a tax exempt to certain commodities without consulting his East Africa partner states colleagues. Which of these companies are linked to politicians? Which of these companies are linked to families of political leaders? Which of these companies have brought the poisonous sugar? Which of these companies have brought industrial sugar? Which of these companies have brought consumer sugar for the people? On the same length, Kenya Revenue Authority, Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Bureau of Standards, and all other government agencies will also be called upon to come and ascertain.
And Trade and Industry Cabinet Secretary Aden Mohammed is questioning the chemical test results conducted on samples of counterfeit sugar, claiming it was laced with components of mercury and copper. It is these results that were disclosed by Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, alarming Kenyans across the country who have been consuming sugar from retail stores. The Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti, has insisted that revelations on mercury in sugar were made based on test results.
We have records at the Kenya Bureau of Standards on who inspected this sugar before they left the country, or if they were inspected here in country, what the test results were. To the best of our knowledge, there is no indication of anything like mercury that has been found in any of those sugars. We need to trace back the origin of that sugar, and if indeed there is mercury, we must do very quickly recall of all that sugar into this that is currently in the country and take them back and destroy them accordingly. If, however, we can confirm and agree that additional tests have been done and no traces have been found,
Kenya Bureau of Standards have alluded to us that they never conducted the results that are being now quoted elsewhere. We also want to hear from the CS Matiang'i where they conducted those tests and what are those tests. And two, whether the sugar that is in the shelves, the sugar that is also in the various supermarkets, whether it's fit for human consumption.
When you are distributing chemicals, you are selling Kenyans poison that you are purporting to be sugar, and you're making money out of it, you are engaged in murder on a mass scale.
We know who imported sugar into this country last year. They came through the port of Mombasa. We should be able to go and ask these people, how much sugar did you import? We actually allowed these people to come in with this sugar.
Now, the pre-trial hearing of the case in which Youth Affairs PS Lilian Omolo, NOS Director General Richard Dumbai, and 45 other suspects are accused of illegally profiting from hundreds of billions of shillings of NOS failed to take place yet again after defense lawyers successfully asked for a postponement. The lawyers told the court that the prosecution had failed to supply them with all the documents related to the case for the second time.
Starting to get into a pre-trial without knowing each and everything, without the input of the clients, will be starting on a wrong foot. So when we ask for 14 days, Your Honor, we are not being unreasonable, we are actually being very accommodative.
The defense team actually submitted that they were ready to proceed the coming week. In fact, they said that they had blocked their diaries and their dates, Your Honor. The state has availed or has complied with all the orders that the court has given, Your Honor.
Perhaps they may be willing to accommodate. And if they were willing to accommodate, we don't need Your Honor to spend the next 2 hours addressing you on this position.
There was consensus for the parties to be given more time. The parties are given more time. The DPP will supply photocopies of the original written statements and also the typed copies to the advocates who supplied the reams of paper.
Civil Service head Joseph Kinyua, who was the Treasury Permanent Secretary at the time the Anglo leasing scandal came to light, told the court that he was unaware that the contract had the valid legal opinion of the AG. Kinyua and former Attorney General Amos Wako were summoned in April to testify in the suit where former senior government officials and businessmen are facing charges related to the multi-billion shilling security tenders that the state has termed irregular. Testifying before the trial, Magistrate Felix Kombo, Kinyua concurred that legal opinion is given by the AG, then Amos Wako, but that he was unaware of the contract and satisfied all legal requirements in Kenya. Kinyua, now the head of public service, said a lead up to events forced him to advise for cancellation of the contract for fear it may expose the government to potential suits. He said he wrote to the Attorney General to cancel the contract formally, but has never received feedback regarding his letters since. The High Court in Machakos has stopped the Water Resources Authority from demolishing residential units at the Green Park Estate in Machakos County. In May, the authority issued residents of the estate with a 21-day notice to vacate their homes which border Stony River Athi on grounds that they were on riparian land. This came after River Athi broke its banks and flooded homes in the estate. The estate's developer, Superior Homes, went to court arguing that the same authority had cleared the project in 2013, saying that it fell outside the riparian land. Justice George Odunga will give further direction on the matter on the 3rd of July. And we're buckled down in business, where research into genetically modified and drought-tolerant maize in Kenya has received a boost after the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation extended a 2.4 billion shillings grant to the African Agricultural Technology Foundation. This money will be used to intensify research into drought-tolerant and insect-resistant maize hybrids, such as BT varieties. Scientists in the project say the new hybrids will trade under the name Teller and have been enhanced through biotechnology to improve their drought tolerance and ability to resist attacks by insects. The seeds have been tested in field trials in Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa and Uganda, and have not only shown heat drought resistance but also tolerance to the fall army or armyworm. AATF says it will use the grant to purchase regulatory approvals for environmental release of the BTDT Teller maize varieties across Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Mozambique and South Africa. Now, the Kenya Human Rights Commission is calling for disbandment of the team established by the Inspector General of Police to investigate the Patel Dam tragedy in Solai, Nakuru County. Speaking during the release of its findings on the tragedy, KHRC has expressed its reservations with national and county government committees put up to address the issues of Solai after the tragedy, and that those who survived the horrific tragedy might not be compensated as earlier promised by the government. KHRC also insists that the dam tragedy be expedited with good investigations.
Kuna komiti yoyote ambao ina mambo ya Solai, waadhiriwa wa Solai, tuweze kuhuzishwa sisi kama viongozi wa waadhiriwa, ndio tuweze kujua kuanzia word go ni nini inaendelea.
We demand for urgent release of independent reports by NEMA and WRA on environmental impact of the Solai Dam. As directed by the DPP, the Inspector of Police should publish a report on the causes of the tragedy and the names of those culpable.
Deputy President William Ruto says the main reason why the education system in the country is changing is to ensure the quality of education improves, as this will help increase the number of innovators. This will make national examinations no longer useful, as emphasis will be placed on continuous assessment tests. On the other hand, the chair of the Kenya National Examination Council, George Mahoha, stressed that no exam paper will leak to candidates before they sit for it.
Some very, very few principals collecting money from students, promising them that they are going to deliver the exam. Utatoa wapi? Where will you get, what are you going to deliver? Where do you intend to get it from? If you think that because Matiang'i left, don't forget he's now in charge of security. So, we shall have a lot more security.
We need our education system to produce inventors, innovators, leaders, and game changers out of Kenyan classrooms in their hundreds of thousands. This is the reason for our curriculum shift of focus to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It is also why we now want to work with continuous assessments rather than a single win or lose final examination.
Well, last week it was the fresh vetting of government heads of accounting and procurement that dominated national conversation in the war on graft. This week, the conversation has moved on to the lifestyle audit as a cure to the corruption that has plagued President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration. But while the gesture may be grand, questions have again arisen as just how practicable a measure it is and if it may even be necessary at all. NTV's Olive Barrows brings us more on this story.
It was a historic occasion for a number of reasons. There was, of course, what has become the customary handshake between political foes making peace. And not least of all, there was this, a first in Kenya's short political history.
Na ule wa kwanza kufanyiwa lifestyle audit ni mimi kwa sababu mimi ndio mfanyikazi number 1. Si ndio hiyo?
Mimi kama mfanyikazi number 1, President Uhuru Kenyatta told us he would be subjecting himself to a lifestyle audit. And while it's no doubt a historic pronouncement, not everyone is convinced that it's the right approach to corruption.
What has already become evident is that a legal framework is lacking. Speaking to NTV tonight on phone, the chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly, William Cheptumo, expressed fears that the process risks being politicized to settle scores. He adds his voice to that of Wiper Democratic Movement leader Kalonzo Musyoka, who on Tuesday advised on the need for a legal framework to guide the process.
Our movement proposes the establishment of a legal framework to guide the process of lifestyle audit and ensure that no one escapes scrutiny.
Debate raged even as Deputy President William Ruto expressed a willingness to subject his lifestyle to scrutiny, portraying himself as a man unfairly viewed with suspicion.
William Ruto will be among the first to submit himself for that exercise. I can see the media already have done some work on me. I did expect that they would do, the next day it will be somebody else, but it looked like it stopped at me only. I thought the lifestyle audit was meant for everybody. But that be as it say, hopefully it will help us put to rest what goes on in the rumor mill and what goes on with half-truths and many of those things that go on there.
Job Ogonda, an anti-corruption authority, however, views it as a load of hot air. Ogonda, who previously worked as Transparency International Kenya's executive director and with the UNDP, is doubtful the proposed lifestyle audits of public and state offices will yield any real results.
Fighting corruption is not a technical issue. Fighting corruption is inherently a political issue. If somebody has built a house worth 10 billion shillings, 1 billion shillings over the last 1 year and submitted tax returns of showing income of 1 million shillings last year, the Revenue Authority has the mandate to slap that person with the tax demand of 30% of that 10 billion shillings on which he built the house. So the mechanisms, the mechanics of it are actually really, really simple. The politics of it is extremely complicated.
Olive Barrows, NTV.
Let's see what is happening across the border. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar held talks in Ethiopia's capital, the first time the two men have met since 2016 when a peace deal they had signed collapsed into fighting between their armed forces. The meeting between the two leaders was held behind closed doors. The gathering is being billed by Ethiopia's government as a concrete chance attending a 5-year-old civil war that has killed tens of thousands of people and forced more than 3 million to flee their homes. turn our focus on the housing sector in Kenya. Of course, this is a pivotal pillar on the Big Four agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And we know that Kenya's housing challenge is extreme. There is no home on the formal market below 2 million shillings, a level that is still completely unaffordable to low-income populations. Property prices in Kenya continue to rise at a rapid rate, and according to real estate and property experts, this trend is likely to continue. Kenya isn't yet oversupplied with housing, and as a result, 60% of urban residents live in slums, and this is just the supply side. The demand side is just as underdeveloped. Only 8% of urban Kenyans have access to housing finance, and there are currently only 22,000 active mortgages in the whole country. This is not because Kenya lacks the desire to own home or home ownership, because we know home ownership is a central part of our culture. Instead, it is because of a nascent mortgage market that equals only 2.5% of GDP and financial market that suffers from a lack of long-term capital to own lenders as mortgages. As a result of the constraints on both the supply and demand sides, Kenya's low-income urban population is forced to live in informal settlements with no security of tenure, limited access to water, sewage and power systems, and a myriad of security issues. Today, we turn our focus on housing Kenya and what the government is doing, what the private also sector is doing to make sure at least you have a roof over your head, and how also you can get access to affordable housing in the country with also, we know, the interest rates soaring through the roof, despite the fact that we do know that also there was an interest rate cap at 14%. That has not really, of course, made many Kenyans realize the dreams of owning houses. So what are the avenues that we can access cheaper housing, affordable housing in this country? This morning I'm holding court with the Principal Secretary of State Department for Housing and Urban Development. This is Charles Hinga Mwaura. Also, we do have with us Mwangi Githaiga, who is the Managing Director of Kenya Women Finance Trust, the banking on women. Also, we do have with us Samuel Maina, who's the chairman of Urithi Housing Cooperative Society Limited, and we have Ruth Odera. She's the regional director of Habitat Kenya. So you can also head over to our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. Head over also to our profile name or profile page on Facebook. Give us a thumbs up there. That is AM Live NTV on our Facebook. Let's get talking. How can we make sure that we get a proper housing here in the country, which is also your right that is codified within the Constitution, right? That is from the Bill of Rights. Proper housing is key and pivotal for you. And of course, we need clarification from the ministry as well as far as the National Housing Fund is concerned. We had yesterday also the Cabinet Secretary say there was a correction that he needed to make about the 0.5% of the National Housing Fund. And what is this fund going to do at all? So allow me to also throw our guests into, of course, the bigger arena to tell us about what is happening on the housing market here in the country. We'll begin with you, PS Charles, just to tell us, first of all, this particular correction that was from the PS, from the Cabinet Secretary yesterday regarding the National Housing Fund. What is it, first of all, the 0.5%, and how are Kenyans going to contribute on this?
Thank you very much, Debarl, and good morning to the viewers. Debarl, before we get to the 0.5 and 1% error,
yes,
I think it's important for us to begin by looking at the legal framework of where this is coming from.
Okay. And
the Housing Act, Cap 117, which is an act that has been there since the 60s, actually anticipated the establishment of the Housing Fund. So it has been part, it's nothing new. So Section 6 of the Housing Act establishes the fund. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. And so for many years, we have not lived up to the aspirations of establishing this fund. And why is this fund important? It is important because universally it is accepted that, first of all, housing is a basic human right.
Yes.
But to achieve that basic right, it is very difficult if you just leave it to the market forces alone. Mm-hmm. And that is why many economies in this world have gone ahead and established funds. And as we get on with the debate, we'll go through some of the more successful ones and what they did. Also, Section 43(1) of the Constitution also gives every Kenyan a right to not just housing, but decent housing, and accessible as well. And if you look at Section 31 of the Employment Act, it actually imposes an obligation on every employer to provide housing, but it's actually quite onerous, that act, because it says that near where you work. And so when you look at the legal framework, you know, when I got appointed by His Excellency, the first thing that we had to do was to look at the legal framework, look at what we can work with that is already existing in the legal framework. And so what we've just done in the last 100 days is to put together a framework that will bring these aspirations of every Kenyan and also fulfill the constitutional mandate of providing decent housing. So that is where this 0.5% and versus 1% comes from. As a state department, we did benchmark this particular you know, percentage, and we looked at various economies, and I can run quickly through some of them before now we come to what we submitted. If you look at Singapore, the Central Provident Fund in Singapore, they impose 20% on employees and 17% on employers towards the Central Provident Fund. If you look at Mexico, it is a payroll tax at 5%. If you look closely to our neighbors here in the continent, we have got Cameroon, which is 1.5% for the employers and 1% for the employees. China is 5% for employer and 5% for employees. Yes. Nigeria is 2.5%. So it is nothing new. It is an acceptable norm that for us to be able to provide housing to every Kenyan, then, and in order for us to be able to achieve social justice, that we need to make sure that we contribute a little bit more so that we can be able to provide that safety net. So from our side, we submitted to National Treasury 2.5% for employer and 2.5% employee contribution towards this fund. And obviously, after a lot of robust debate, you know, Treasury thought it is prudent, you know, given all the other, you know, other things that they had to consider with the recent budget, that we start at a base of 0.5% and progress, you know, and as we bring many Kenyans onto the table and as Kenyans start to see the results, should we decide to increase it to 1%, then at least it is coming from a base of there is something that is already happening.
Then the question will be then again, why has there been this glacial slowness to coming up with such an initiative, knowing that yes, we need decent housing as wananchi in this country, and why has it also been slow off the mark, and why do you think right now is a providential time to have this particular funding?
Debarl, the Big Four agenda, the genesis of the Big Four agenda, it's important we understand where it came from.
Yes, please.
And maybe this is something that we have not, as government, been able to articulate very well. You know, last year was an election year, and when His Excellency the President went, you know, on the campaign trail, listening to what the Kenyans had to say, you know, they were very appreciative of all the infrastructure investment that went in his first term. But the key message that kept on coming up is households are hurting. Okay, there's a lot of pain that is being experienced at households. So if you look at the Big Four agenda, and we break it down to simple, you know, to explain terms, it is essentially all the 4 pillars of household of the Big Four agenda is targeted towards households. So what the president had is healthcare is bankrupting households. Food security is bankrupting households because of food, the cost of food is very high. Our young ones don't have jobs, and that is why he's come up with this pillar of manufacturing. And of course, majority of Kenyans, as you've correctly put in your introduction, live in subhumane conditions. So we have got to address those issues. In our Vision 2030, you know, for us to be a middle-income economy by 2030, the drafters of this Vision 2030 identified housing as one of the key pillars for us to move to middle economy. But for us to do that, we need to produce 250,000 houses, 250,000 houses a year Now, what have we been producing? The first MTP or medium-term plan of Vision 2030, we only produced 50,000 houses. And that is 3 years. Now, and those 50,000 houses were not even in the affordable range. It was in the highest range. So progressively, we have had 1.8 million. Today, we are looking at about 1.8 to 2 million housing deficit. That's what we are starting with.
Thank you.
So this pillar then of affordable housing is not just nice to talk about, but it's something that has got to happen. And that is why we are tackling this issue, and we're tackling it hard. There are difficult conversations that we must all as Kenyans have, but we all must agree that we cannot continue on the same trajectory where 95% of our people have no access to decent housing, all right? And Debarl, I'm not a politician, but every 5 years this country burns. And when you look at why this country burns, part of it is because there's a strong feeling that there's a lack of ownership. You know, you feel that you know, you don't have a stake in the economy. So this pillar is not just about 4 walls and a roof.
Yes,
it is about giving a sense of ownership. And so, at the very minimum, our aspiration is to produce 500,000 homeowners in the next 5 years.
In the next 5 years.
It is a daunting task because we have a limited pool of resources to fund these initiatives. And remember, our target is actually 1 million housing. We require 2.8 trillion shillings over the next 5 years.
Thank you. Right, thank you. All right, we need also to, because you've mentioned, the problem is the shortages of housing in the country. And the fact also that comes to our mind is the inaccessibility to affordable housing financing in this country, bearing the fact that I've just read also from our intro that we have less than 25% mortgage facilities or people who have really taken up mortgages in this country. This truly highlights, despite the fact that we are so desirous of having a roof over our heads, but accessing financing, that has been a tripping wire. And this is where also I like to rope in also Mr. Mwangi to just come and tell us, first of all, just a broad overview from your outlook, what is happening in terms of accessing financing, interest caps. We thought that will be, the magic word that will actually bring a discernible difference in the market, but that has not been realized. In fact, we're having a debate on how we can also repeal this particular, interest rate capping that is ongoing right now. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting us to come and have this discussion. I think the issue of housing is much wider than we are looking at. And I think as a country, we need to be more clearer on what we are talking about. Because I think there's a lot of concentration on the issue of urban housing and where a minority of our people live.
Yes.
And I think we also need to bring into the discussion the issue of rural housing, because majority of Kenyans do live in the rural area, and that's where actually housing is a big problem. And the reason why the cities are under serious pressure is because of the issue of rural-urban migration. Yes. And why there is rural-urban migration in this country is because we are not developing our rural areas. People are looking for opportunities to come to towns, and they put unnecessary great pressure onto the cities and urban areas. What as a country I think we need to do is we need to move towards thinking on how we can develop our rural areas. And with devolution, I think we need to have a mind shift from thinking that everybody needs to come and live in the cities, and we focus on having decent living standards in the rural area. And for us to do that, then we have to change the narrative. We have to change the narrative from mortgages to the whole issue of affordable housing across the whole divide, across the whole economy. And now, having said that, I think the issue of interest rate cap, is another debate for another day. But it's in Kenya, I think interest rates are driven by many forces. That some of them, we need many players to come. Government, we need the legal system, we need the banks, financiers, and it's a whole discussion that go beyond just affordability of housing. Of course, there is a lot that needs to be done to make sure that there is money available into the housing industry. But as an institution ourselves, what we have decided is, because our focus is on the rural area, 70% of our operations are in the rural area, Why can't we shift so that even what the government is focusing on the big four, especially on the area housing, we shift also and start talking about rural housing? Because to me, when I travel out in the rural areas, the first thing that hits you is the standard of living in the rural areas is deteriorating by day, and that's not being addressed. And the issue of RAD tenure is a big discussion, because you can't talk about housing without talking about RAD tenure. You can't talk about financial institution putting money in a situation that the RAD tenure is a problem, because you need to guarantee that when you finance a project, that project will not be demolished in the next few years, because that puts your credit at risk. So we need the discussion to be wider. The issue of housing has something to do with also the RAD security in this country, both in the urban and in the rural area. And until we have addressed it, financial institutions will not commit money in those areas. And it takes quite some effort to go in that direction. The other thing I think we need to look at is, let's not just talk about housing, let's talk about decent housing. Decent housing. And when we talk about housing, we are not only talking about four walls, we are talking about sanitation, we are talking about water, we are talking about cook solutions, because I think there is assumption in towns that you turn on the gas and you get cooking going on. But when you go to the rural area, it doesn't work that way. I think we need to address all those. And now even the government is trying to conserve forests. So what are we doing to make sure that we cook in a decent way, we reduce internal air pollutions in the households where we all are brought up? Yes. And so it's a whole divide. So it cuts across the four walls. It goes to writing, it goes to cooking, it goes to water and sanitation. So it's a whole discussion. And I think if we want to debate housing, we need to open the discussion from the urban areas and take it across the country.
To take it across the country. Yeah. Affordability also, and of course you raised, these are very many strands that we can actually not really cover exhaustively in the forum, but we'll try as much as possible to really cover all this ground, because I think those are good facets that we want to see. That are we also just navel gazing within the urban areas, or we are widening, our eyes and looking, across the borders from the urban areas into the rural areas as well. But the issue of financing the public-private partnership, the PPP, also is really pivotal when the government cannot hold all this, huge, responsibility of housing Kenya on their shoulder without also other private partners really coming into play as well. Right now, we know also the SACCO bill is on the floor of the House, and SACCOs also are very pivotal, because in light of the interest cappings that has come to the fore right now, people are rushing to the SACCOs as a refuge, and a solace this time, because at least they can be able to have a wiggle room on how they can actually finance some of their mortgages when it comes, when it comes to actually accessing affordable housing. And this is where I want to hear from you, Mr. Samuel Maina, to the chair of the Rural Housing Cooperative SACCO, to tell us more about how that is in light of interest cap that went to live I think last year, and how people have been rushing to the SACCOs.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate you having us here. It is true that the SACCO was supposed to provide an alternative to the provision of finances, especially after the capping of interest last year. And we had a discussion here on the pros and cons of capping interest. But one thing that is evident is that the capping of interest does not mitigate on the bottom line of the pyramid, the very bottom of the pyramid. It goes to, the high risk borrowers are not cushioned by the capping. So if the government was to be serious in this endeavor, they would have better used the SACCO and the cooperatives to make sure that those people who are assumed to be high risk, and these are the majority borrowers, are sustained, and also alternatives are given for funds, because for any SACCO to give funds, they also need to have some finances from another source. But through the SACCO model, what happens is that people tend to borrow among themselves. So there is that importance that should be seriously looked into. Even as we go back to the capping, because the capping of interest is not a panacea to the solutions that the government is trying to seek. It also you know, in a liberal economy, you should also let the market forces, you know, take their own course. But having said that, we should also take cognizance of the fact that the low end of the pyramid need to be considered very seriously by giving interventions that will make sure that this money is not only available but also affordable. Coming back to what the government is doing and the Big Four agenda, yes, we must all acknowledge that our CS is so passionate about it. I've interacted with him in various forums, and he does not only talk, he walks the talk. He is very desirous of trying to understand what is that which is ailing this sector. But for the government to also appear to be very serious in this, they must have a very clear roadmap on the players that they want to use in harnessing that, you know, that front. The cost of land, actually how genuine the land is, and the cost of land. That has been a very daunting task to every investor. And of course, the cost of land is dictated by the proximity from the social and infrastructural amenities, because the more interior the land is, the cheaper it becomes. So if you want to mitigate on that, you take the, you take the infrastructures where development want to be. And that is why the government must also come very, very strongly and provide such secondary and primary social and infrastructural amenities so that you can pull people towards a different direction. The concentration of industries in town pulls people from rural to urban. But if you take some you know, industries and some anchor projects in some rural areas like Kitengela, where there is vast land. Yes. The university, if you, for example, Nairobi University was in Kitengela, 50 kilometers from tarmac, and the road is provided, it will also bring so many other settlements around that establishment. But again, we have hospitals and other social amenities that pull people to town. How many people come to town to seek medical attention? How many people come to town to seek other amenities? Is because they are not available in the rural areas. And the issue raised by my colleague here is that if you also develop the rural areas, will also you know, dissuade people from coming to town. Thank you. Then there's the issue of affordable. We are using the word affordable.
I'm sorry, Barty, could we just also pick up on the affordable as we come back from the other side of a break? It is actually 1 past 7 on the nose. We want to take a short break. When we come back, we continue with the discussion. Of course, don't lose your track of thought on that affordability. And But Pierce and Ruth Odera also, she's here. But Pierce, you can clarify for us. Yes, we are talking issues that has been raised here by Mr. Mwangi of land security. We are pushing away people from, you know, the urban areas going to Kitengela, the fringes of Nairobi and the rural areas. But still, land security is a big deal, right? Look at what is happening in the Green Estate right now. Many people are not very sure that they still will have their houses. And the court now has moved in to try and quell that situation temporarily. But we do not know if their houses will be demolished. So where are we missing the links? Well, within the institutions, when we have, you know, credible title deeds and yes, the search has been done and we're given clearance. And we had also the chair of the National Environmental Management Authority saying that those particular lands near the river, they were not on the riparian land. So what is happening? We have the Water Resources Management giving this particular survey story, National Environmental Management Authority giving another side of a story. Who do we believe as Kenyans? And if yes, our houses will be raised down, then who is to compensate? I think these are questions that also Kenyans will want to know. So let's just take a short break right now. When we come back, of course, we explore deeper on this issue of housing Kenya. And of course, remember, you can chime in. Head over to our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook. And just also to remind you, the court in Machakos has stopped the Water Resources Authority from demolishing residential units at the Green Park Estate in Machakos County. And in May, the authority issued residents of the estate with a 21-day notice to vacate their homes which borders Stony River Athi on grounds that they were on riparian land. This came after River Athi broke its banks and flooded homes in the estate. The estate's developer, Superior Homes, went to court arguing that the same authority had cleared the project in 2013, saying that it fell outside the riparian land. Justice Jojo Dunga will give further direction on the matter on the 3rd of July. And of course, this epitomizes some of the issues that we might really find, the kinks and the wrinkles as far as land is concerned in this country, as far as housing is concerned in this country. A lot of challenging, tripping wires that we have along the way in accessing affordable housing in this country. Even if you get your land, you get your mortgage to be paying your land, your housing, or for the land that you've really bought, you're not really secure on whether someone will just come from the left and claim the land, or say this particular housing or the house is on a reserved, on road reserve, or if the land is a riparian land for the case of Green Estate. This is what we're discussing this morning on Housing Kenya. And you can head over to a Twitter handle, AM Live NTV. Also, AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook. Remember to give us a thumbs up there. And also, we shall be putting up our numbers for you to call in, ask questions, and share your contributions as far as Housing Kenya is concerned. But affordability is very key, despite the fact that we have a huge expanse of land. Then how do we get financing to actually get a tract of land and also put up a house? And of course, this is a conversation we're having with our panelists this morning. Before we took a short break, we promised to circle back with Mr. Samuel Maina, who is the chairman of Uthiru Cooperative. Uthiru, let me just give you the Uthiru Housing Cooperative Society Limited. And I hope you've not really lost your track of thought on affordability. On that, let's continue.
Thank you. Correction is Urithi.
Urithi.
Uthiru is a place.
Yes, Urithi.
Yes.
I normally have my tongue twisted on that. Thank you very much.
You're pardoned. So we're talking about affordability. Let's also be very clear on what is affordable, because yes, affordable is also relative to the income. So the question of affordable housing also goes down to the disposable incomes of our people, the remuneration regime that we have.
Yes.
So that what is disposable to me after meeting my basic needs, apart from the four walls of the house, what else do I need to do in that house? Of course, the issue of the Big Four agenda comes into play.
Yes.
But again, we should also ask, is the government so keen to provide homes or houses? Because homes is a whole spectrum of things that happens in the house.
Yes.
And if you don't have a warm home, if you don't have a good home, you have challenges even if you have a big house.
Yes.
That's a story for another day. But the point is, there are other issues that need to be mitigated upon before we even arrive to the issue of the housing. But critically, what kind of houses are we providing? The social houses is very key. I know the government, through the CS, has put up that as one of the areas that they want to focus on. We've talked about the cost of land. We've talked about the cost of material. We need to be very clear on how are we mitigating on the cost of material.
Cost of material.
Yes, because if we have bulk purchase of material through the government, if we can bring China here, we don't need to go to Dubai and China. The government can have a one-stop shop for all those things that people may need to input in their houses, so that everybody will not be bringing their single containers.
Thank you.
We'll know how many people want to build houses within this year.
Thank you.
How much money do you want to spend?
Right.
So the government can come and support the players in the industry.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's another facet that we'll add on the discussion. But let's also rope in Ruth Odera to tell us more about the PPP, the public-private partnership, that also is very pivotal in trying to ease the burden from the shoulders of the government as well. And what is the interface between the PPP, or the interface between the public-private partnership, and how is government also trying to aid in terms of easing maybe that particular harmonious relationship, so that yes, we can make this country move forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Debarl. Thank you for your invitation to come and discuss matters housing. I work for Habitat for Humanity, and what we do, we believe in that everybody has a decent place to live in. and we work to reduce homelessness and substandard housing. And this one we do through various channels. We do this through, we work with the civil society, work with the government, we work with the NGOs, and we do this, we believe that housing is bigger than just, the four walls. We believe that housing has, there are various facets of housing. You need toilets, you need water in that house. In order to do this, we believe that we should work beyond, just financial institutions. We work with the government, we work with other partners, and in working with the partners, we can reach more people than you can reach, building houses. Habitat for Humanity also deals directly building houses for the vulnerable. We also do advocacy. We lobby for certain things like land tenure systems, policies regarding land, and we also work with in the market. We work with the market actors to just reduce the blockades in the housing value chains. For example, we support institutions dealing with solar, with sanitation. So we do a lot of things. We believe that if you use partnerships, then you achieve more than working alone. And we have several partners. We work in about 100 countries, and we work with partners, material suppliers, and we work with SACCOs, we work with banks, we work with other financial institutions. And that partnership, we believe, that gives us, expands the horizon, if I may say. Yeah.
And you're particularly intent also on rural areas, aside maybe from the urban areas, but you actually focusing on you want to empower people within the rural areas. You can tell us more about your Habitat for Humanity within the rural areas, just briefly.
Habitat for Humanity believes in, as I've said, affordable housing, and our target market is mainly residential housing. And in residential housing in Kenya, for example, we work with partners to extend housing to the rural areas, because that's where the majority of people live. In Kenya, for example, over 60% of the population live in the rural areas. And when we are talking about housing, we must also consider that target market that is huge and people really don't think about. In Kenya, when you talk about housing, you find that people talk about mortgages.
Yes.
And not housing in the rural area. So the question is who is the voice for people in the rural area? So we have projects in Kenya that supports financial institutions to develop housing products for people in the rural area. And these are small loans for incremental building. Debarl, if you think about it, people have built for a very long time. How do they build? People have been building. But you see that the houses in the rural areas lack that adequacy. Either it could be substandard or it could be lacking certain things. Yes. And that's where we come in. We say that everybody has a right to a decent place to live in. And that's what we support, the decent place to live in. We not only support affordability, but we're also supporting people's ability to build houses that they can afford, based on the materials that they can afford, based on their preferences. So we actually advocate for people building using local materials that they can afford, that is within reach. So that's what we do at Habitat.
Right, thank you. Let's just come back to Bwana CS. First of all, we also ran a story about what is happening with Green Park Estate, and this just epitomizes, as I've mentioned before, the issue of security, land security, even just the security of your own property. Sometimes, yeah, we have all these titles, but we wonder what is the sanctity of these titles that we do have. Someone will come rapping on our door and tell us, of course, this is on road reserves, riparian land. The same is happening to many Kenyans. So despite that you go all through the system and the rigmarole of the system, still you're not assured that your property is safe.
Debarl, let me first of all say that I do not wish to comment on something that I do not have all the facts on.
But not necessarily on the Green Park.
On the Green Park,
but yes,
right?
but just generally on the land security.
Let's talk about land security.
Yes.
but also let's talk about the rule of law. And we can come up with all the interventions that we can think of and many laws, but if we don't become a country that obeys laws, it is a zero-sum game. And that cuts across. I mean, do we need new traffic rules in Kenya? The ones that are there are broken. When it comes to the building code, when we talk about how we are building in the urban areas, there is a systemic problem. And that systemic problem, we are addressing it. That's why you're seeing that there's a lot of demolitions that are going on, because people have encroached on riparian areas. People are building houses that are unsafe to live in. One of the institutions that is under me is National Building Inspectorate. It's a painful thing that we have time and again buildings are collapsing, and partly is because either someone built without approvals, and others, they pay their way to get this approval. So yes, there is a bigger conversation to have about some of the ills that have brought us to where we are. But Debarl, coming back to the issue of affordable housing, and we have a very comprehensive package. And
but before, I want to hover there a bit before you actually come to affordability. But what happens when we have institutions have given you this letter of clearance, and you have this letter of clearance and tell you you're good to go? Then they clash. NEMA here is clashing, and we have also Warma clashing, right? Someone has given a thumbs ahead. The chairman has gone full steam full steam ahead on camera, telling us it is not on riparian land. Right. And we have another institution saying, no, this is on riparian land. So who is not really obeying the law? I mean, I'm the innocent Mwananchi who's caught up in between.
Debarl, as I said, for me, I do not want to comment on something where I do not have all the facts. So I cannot, and I cannot be an arbiter between the two.
I'm not really drawing you to this particular case, but I'm just saying what happens if I'm caught up in between institutions who have cleared me.
It is definitely a problem. So we are not running away from the fact that there is a problem. And I said, there are people that have got titles today, more than more than one person having title to the same property. There are people who can show you approvals that they got. So there is a problem, and we are confronting this issue head on, because to bring the confidence of investors, issues I think that have been ventilated here this morning around titling and the security of tenure is very, very, very important. So, but I do believe that over time we will, specifically to this issue of Warma and NEMA, those issues are going to be sorted out, and we will. The truth is going to come out. But yes, there is. We do have issues, and those issues are being addressed. And it's the same thing that you're seeing on the contraband, material coming in. Certainly there is some systemic problem, and that's why you can see that we are tackling it aggressively.
Thank you.
So coming back to affordable housing, Debarl, we have a very comprehensive program, and it is important for us to understand how we got there, and so that we can be able to address the issue of affordability and availability. The first thing that I think the panelists have ventilated quite correctly is the issue of land. Land in Kenya is very expensive, first of all. In Nairobi, statistics show that it's the most expensive land in the continent, right? And not only is it expensive, but we don't have serviced land. So how is government addressing this vis-a-vis affordable housing? And in some development, land take up to 40 to 60% of the cost of the total development. So if we don't tackle the issue of land head on, we will not be able to address the issue of affordability. So what government has done is to first of all look within as to what we own. And we do own quite a bit of land, and we are packaging and servicing that land and releasing it to the private sector to develop. That's number one. Number two, we are looking at issues of cost of construction. The cost of construction in this country is also very high, the cost of material, and the way we are addressing it is also looking at what we call adopting industrial techniques. We're going to do mass production of houses as opposed to bespoke, different type of housing. We are standardizing those housing. The 500,000 housing program is going to be on a mass production. That way, we leverage what we call large economies of scale Today, I'm negotiating with cement manufacturers, local cement manufacturers, and I'm saying, if I guarantee you market, how much are you able to cut in your prices? And we are getting very interesting conversation because they're saying, guarantee me market, and I will lower my prices. And because cost of construction makes anywhere up to 70%, if we don't address that issue, material cost, we're not going to achieve that. The other thing, Debarl, is I think what we've just discussed now, the issue of processes. It takes 9 months for you to be able to transfer title, if it's a mortgage, and 6 months if it's a cash transaction. We again cannot be, slay this giant of affordable housing if we continue on that trajectory. That's why you see what is happening in the Ministry of Lands. We are digitizing the registry. We are re-engineering our processes.
Yes.
Because a lot of processes, Debarl, is just, the paper being stamped and moving from here and stamping, and there's no value creation.
Thank you.
And number 4 is the issue of financing. And the issue of financing, Debarl, if you allow me quickly to just touch, because it touches on the issue of the 0.5%, which I know the last few days has been very topical. We have got issues of finances both on the supply side and the demand side. Let's look at the issue of the supply. The issue of supply, Debarl, is today financial institutions, despite the cap, are not lending. They're not lending, okay, and they're sitting on a lot of liquidity. Okay, and also they're sitting with a lot of non-performing loans. Okay, so how can we create confidence in our financial institutions so that they can lend to developers like Urithi, so that they can be able to build houses? So the way we are addressing it as government is to take away what we call market risk. Okay, so we as government are guaranteeing offtake.
Thank you.
To the market.
Thank you.
And lastly, on the demand side, we are we are financing end user through what is called Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company and the National Housing Development Fund.
Thank you. And of course, this we want to truly train our focus on financing, because if we go broadly on so many issues, then we'll not really train our focus on there. But all these facets also, they affect financing as well, you've just raised. You've heard from the government, and this I want also just to throw it to the panelists as well. Now that we have also the PS here, I think it's good also to have that interaction as well, because this is a collaborative effort from the government and the private sector as well. But coming back to you, Mr. Mwangi, maybe you can tell us what some of the challenges, because you face, and I know maybe you've rolled out, you've partnered up with some of the players. I know also there's a good initiative also from Habitat for Humanity as well that you've come up with Nyumba Smart, talking about decent housing. Then you can actually assure us this morning on some of navigable challenges that you've actually faced in terms of financing. Yeah. People managing to service their mortgages as well, and other facets of products that you do have that people may also hear this morning as far as housing is concerned, that can argument on what government is doing.
Okay. Thank you very much. We work very closely with Habitat, and we developed a product, but as we focused on the rural areas, because the 60% of these Kenyans who are usually forgotten and assumed that they can live in holes or wherever they live, it's got to be addressed. Yes. So what we did is we came up with a product that can be able to address the issues. So we did pilot. We went to the rural areas, we piloted, we discussed with the rural communities, and we came up with a product that could be able to address their needs. In fact, for the last 3 years, we've disbursed 3.7 billion shillings in rural housing to 54,000 households. And that gives you less than 100,000 per household. Yes. And what Ruth was talking about is the way to approach housing is the same way we did it in long time ago. We do not need to always think about big constructions and big houses. We need to think about an incremental basis. So we finance construction of new units. Yes. And we give our customers enough time, up to 5 years, to be able to pay their loan. But the majority of our people, what we have seen is they are more interested with the renovations. Then you find that they live in a matope house. Yes. They want to remove that and put bricks. The bricks are affordable. They are there. The brick making process is also supported by government, so that they can use soil to make bricks, and then they can plaster. Suddenly, you have a very beautiful house based in the rural area. The others will just say, I have a thatched house, I want to remove the thatch, I want to put corrugated iron sheets. And suddenly you find a new house has come up. Others are just talking about expansion. I have a 2-bedroom, I have a new, I want a third bedroom because my children are becoming mature. Then you are able to work with them. But then what we do is that we disburse the money to the crowns.
Yes.
We trust them that they can be able to manage the activity. They use local artisans. Because that's the whole thing. If you want to make housing affordable and improve the rural economy, then you have to use the local people who are available. And they know the local artisans who are there. Then they are able to complete the units. Once they complete the unit, then slowly over time they start servicing their own. Then we do not only look at that bit, like Ruth has said, of the 4 walls.
Yes.
We look at the issue of energy. How do you cook in the rural area? Most of us, they use the Mawetatu style, where you use firewood. There's a lot of smoke. Then we move from there. We say, fine, can we have jikos that emit less smoke, consume less firewood, so that we can save on the environment. Then the next thing you find the crowns talking about, fine, I have a nice house, I can cook decently, but we are still using the kerosene lamp. Can you put solar system? And Kenya, God gifted us with a lot of resources. Sometimes we think too much, but God has given us a lot. And what God gave Africa is the sunshine. So you can harvest the sunshine during the day. During the night, you have an urban house in the rural area. And once you do that, you find that the home that he was talking about now starts coming out. Because there is a difference between a house and a home. A home is a place where you have a house that is habitable.
Yes.
Then over time, you find now the issues of sanitation come on the discussion.
Yes.
And over time, you find that now, as you address sanitation, you now start now having a home. That can be able to address the people we are talking about. It's a big discussion, and what we need to do is to take the discussion. And I'm happy that the government is taking this to 0.5 levy. In fact, I am hoping that part of that 0.5 will be made available in the rural area through intermediaries that are already doing that.
Thank you.
Because if we can do that, then we have a situation where people are not angry with each other. Because you see, Kenyans are angry with each other because if I live in the rural area and I know that people in the urban areas have certain opportunities that I cannot access, then why would I be happy with this country? So we need to have a level playing ground. We need to improve our country in a uniform way, and we need to take development to the rural area. And issue of affordability of housing is multifaceted. There is the issue of financing, there's the issue of labor, and there is the issue of materials. And I think government may also have to come up with initiatives of saying, it's fine, we have the 4 pillars. What also can we remove so that we don't tax the materials that are for housing? Those, if you overtax housing materials and then you say affordability, then you see you're only talking about affordability from only one angle, which is financing. And I don't think that's where the issues are. So it's a much wider discussion.
A much wider issue. Yes, and of course, so for them that are in the rural areas, so you can see if you are actually living in a mud thatched house, or maybe, yes, of course, you have a mud house. There is this picture that this is transformative, that this particular lady, you wouldn't believe this work actually was just a mud house. And now that has been, transformed to this particular house. So there is hope for many Kenyans as well with what government is doing, with what the private sector is doing, with what also Habitat for Humanity is doing. Really also, they have so many products to transform your life. So we should not just be thinking that this discussion is just for the urban, for the people who are living within Nairobi and the environs, but this is actually going down deep into, of course, the rural areas as well, and how the transformative power of partnership is helping Kenyans as far as giving good, decent housing is concerned. It's just not just a house, but a home as well. So you can actually transform your house. Even if you're having a mud house, it can change to what you're seeing right now, because this initially was a mud house. Let's come to you, Mr. Sam, and you tell us also about, we're talking about financing, and there's this issue of, you raise it, the mortgage refinance companies, Piers, and we have also provisions of housing finance guarantees. And the PPP that we are talking about, all for affordable housing. But let's hear from you. When it comes to the issue of housing finance guarantees, I don't know how also the cooperatives are handling this, the guarantees, because now we can come, I want some cash from you and I'm using land as security. But still, people now are wondering about the sanctity of my title deed. So I'm left on a horn of dilemma. I have my title deed, but also you as a SACCO or even the bank, they're not even nowadays very comfortable with title deeds. So what other provisions do I have?
Of course, the government is very desirous of sanitizing the land processing and titling process, and that will be cured by digitalization of the process from the manual system where files used to disappear and reappear at convenience. So they go and change some things, then you go and do a search, it is clean. After that, when you go home, the title, the file disappears and reverts to the original owner. So such mitigations are being looked into. Is a big issue, but I believe with the good intentions and the effort that we've seen from the part of the government, this will be a thing of the past. I want to talk in terms of what we need to do to empower that person to own a house, that low-end person at the bottom of the pyramid, is to make sure that the money that they pay is commensurate to the mortgage or to the money that they own, they will pay to own. So from rent to ownership. And the best way is through this initiative by the government, Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company. That initiative, if well looked into, will solve the problem. As we realize, we reckon that only 23,000 of Kenyans enjoy this mortgage provision. But the reason is that most of the institutions can only give you a short-term loan. The SACCOs, the cooperatives, can give you as, between 3 to 8 years per average. But you see, a young person coming from college with an income of 40,000 want to spend a third or a quarter of that income towards housing. And therefore means that that person will be paying 15,000 per month. If we can make the same person pay 10,000 or 15,000 towards ownership, it will make sense to someone based on their age and the entry point at the job market. So the issue of how much one can pay. And for example, when we talk of a 1 million house, what kind of a house are we talking of without compromising on the quality? Because again, the question of cheap houses, low quality, does not necessarily mean it's affordable. So we must mitigate on the quality. When the government says we want low-cost houses, low in quality or low in price. So are they using price differentiation or product differentiation? Price differentiation will cater so much on the price. When you buy this cup and you are so much interested in the price differentiation will dictate that this cup will cost 10 shillings. But the same cup can cost 15,000. So the value for money through the mitigations that we have espoused. But having said that, I'm looking at this person being given 10, 20, or even 25 years period to pay. So that 1 million, I'm able to raise it, this low-end person is able to raise that 1 million within 20 years. And that will make sense. And then added to incremental houses. We have a problem in our country whereby you graduate from school, the first house you want to do is 6-bedroomed house, but you only have one child. We must encourage a situation whereby you can have your house at your point of need at that point, and when you are starting your life, you start with 1-bedroom house, then you expand it as time goes by, so that I don't have to put a lot of pressure on myself to do 6 5-bedroom house, where else I just need 1 or 2 bedrooms. So the issue of incremental house is very important.
Thank you.
There's also the issue of multi-generational mortgage.
Hold it for now, so that we don't also cluster a lot of things and then we lose track of thought as well. But let's come to you, Ruth Odera, because we can talk about this partnership and a lot of pictures that we're seeing also. This is an initiative of Habitat for Humanity, also collaborating with Kenya Women Finance Trust. You can see that particular woman. You can tell us about this particular house. I don't know if you're German to it. I can see if you're privy to it. This has been a transformed house, isn't it? Yes. From the rural area. Ruth, you can tell us, was it a thatched house, or was it also a mud house? Then slowly by slowly you've transformed it, a semi-permanent. Give us the nature of what you're doing also on the ground to try and empower Kenyans.
I think that would be best told by Mr. Githaiga.
Mr. Githaiga.
Yeah, that would be best told by Mr. Githaiga. Some houses are built from scratch. Some houses are improved. Some houses are renovated. But that house is, the story of that house is better told by Mr. Githaiga.
Yes. Yes, could we have just the picture back so that also Mr. Githaiga can talk to it as well?
This house, what happened is that the client used to live in normal thatched house. No. So what we did is the rural area thatched house. So what we did is we financed this house in an incremental way.
Incremental way.
This
is what someone is talking about.
Yes, and you can see there is also a water tank.
There's a water tank
which is KWFT branded, which we negotiate with them from the suppliers. Yeah. They get a 30% discount. The tank is delivered to the home area all the way to the rural.
That you'll need to pay us some money for free advertising this morning.
Anyway, so the whole thing is that if you look, because we are missing where the client came from.
Yes, yes.
The family was on another house which was thatched and it was mud house. And then what we did is we used the appropriate technology. You see that house is this bricks. The soil that has made these bricks are local.
They are local.
So you see, the only thing that is not local is the corrugated iron sheet and maybe the windows. And we do it in an incremental way, and we do it very slowly. So the client is able to move. So once you go to the rural area, you find this. What is the difference between being here? In fact, when you think about the people who live in the urban areas and they live in Mathare, in Kibera. Now, these people in the rural areas, they live in a more decent situation. And that's what we are talking about. To curb the rural-urban migration, this is the kind of initiative we need. That's why I was feeling, actually, what the government is talking about, 1 billion houses, it can easily be achieved. It's only that they need to remember Kenya is bigger than urban. And if they sort Kenya from a bigger view, then the 1 billion houses will be easily be achieved. All we need is to have financial institutions, development partners, and us taking positive steps to go to the rural areas and start addressing rural housing.
Right, thank you. Let's say from Charles.
Debarl, so that is actually our position today.
Yes.
The issue of rural housing, the way we are addressing it, is as my panelist has identified, is the issue with rural areas is about the quality of the building material. People in rural areas build their own houses, right?
Yes.
So what government is doing is we are putting what is called ABT centers, appropriate building technique centers, and we have partnered now with the numerical machines. And we have patented a locally made interlocking soil block machine, which we are distributing to all these ABT centers.
Yes.
So that our rural people can be able to go and access this material. And then we are also then providing them with financing, either through intermediaries or when the fund is established, they can borrow directly. Now, we have 92 ABT centers. And in the new budget, we have pushed very hard so that we can increase that to make sure that every constituency in this country has got an ABT center. On the issue of this affordable housing program, it's important for me to explain to Kenyans that even when we say there's a little bit of a pain that we are asking you to contribute, what exactly are we going to achieve? Our aspiration is that we have divided the houses into 3 sectors. There's what we call social housing. Social housing are housing that we want to build that are going to address the people that are in the 0 to 15,000 shillings household income. Now, we know that they need a lot of help for them to be able to live decently. Jamhuri Day last year, the president described what affordable housing is. And in simple terms, and it's not verbatim, he said, whatever amount you are paying for rent today, this program will allow you to continue paying the same amount, but own a decent house. And it is owning, because there's an issue about what ownership does to people. So 0 to 15 is social house, and we are saying that you pay 600,000.
Yes.
15 to 50,000 shillings. We are calling that a low-cost house. And these go up to 2-bedroom houses, right? And they are in the range of 1 million, maximum 2 million, right? And these are big units. The single, we start with the 20 square meters, we go to 40 square meters, right? And then we've got what we're calling mortgage gap. Mortgage gap, is by the name mortgage itself, means that, Debarl, you can go to a bank and you qualify for a mortgage, but the mortgage is still not affordable. So those are two things.
Yes.
You can qualify, but it's not affordable. And affordability means that you are paying a third of your household income towards the house. So this category where we is in between 50,000 and 100,000 shillings. Those three categories is where we are focused on in this particular program. And that makes 97% of the formerly employed. And you can take the converse of that and say that if 60% of Kenyans are in the informal sector, so they're also covered within the 100,000 and below.
Yes.
So this program means that between 600,000 and 3 million, you should be able to get decent houses. And we are actually looking at it more from what we call a human settlement.
Yes.
Human settlement means that I don't want to build a house here and then you have to crisscross the town to go look for good schools. So it is building these houses, putting up good schools, good health facilities, but more importantly, it's about linking them to economic opportunities so that people don't have to live far.
Yes.
Again, you go back by Section 31 of the Employment Act. It says you provide housing where people work. And that is, it's a tall order, but we are up to it and we are confronting the issue. The main thing is going to be when the house is built, how will you buy it?
How will you buy it?
And that is what the essence of this fund is
Thank
going
you.
to be.
Thank you.
Because majority of Kenyans cannot be able to get a mortgage.
Right.
So the fund basically allows you, Debarl,
Thank you.
To pay it over 30 years. Okay, it has much lower interest rates because it is Kenyans that are contributing and we borrow a little bit more. And when you blend it, then it means that we have a rate that can be able to give you a house for 3 million and you're able to, or 2 million or 1 million, and you're able to pay an amount that you're paying today for rent to live in a bad house.
Okay, we have callers who are hanging on the line, and we just want to hear from them as well this morning as far as this issue is concerned. We have Hussein from Isiolo who wants to contribute. Good morning, Hussein.
Morning, for many days.
Hey, many days. Where have you been? Oh, it is good to hear that you've not been swept away by the floods, you know. Morning to you.
I just want to thank the panel who are this morning there.
All right, just a moment, Abix. All right, Hussein, just go full steam ahead. We'll fade away the other caller. We'll take him much later. Just continue. Hello, good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I just wanted to, I've read from the newspapers, the principal secretary is giving us policies and the direction of housing, affordable housing in this country.
Yes.
But I just want to tell him is that right now, I mean, what he's doing is good, put policies in place, but what we need to do is he has to move to the counties and then talk to the private sector, stakeholders, because I think this is a noble idea, long overdue, people are ready and they want to do it. And I'm from pastoralist area. We have a lot of cows. We want to sell them, put up those kind of things.
Yes.
So we need bottom-top way of discussing and at the county levels, because the county governments don't have the capacity to give you the information on what the policy of Agenda 4 means. Secondly, I just wanted to come to his office. I wish I have his number, and I don't know which. I mean, because, you know, sometimes we from rural areas get scared seeing the on National Housing Corporation, I just want to advise him that National Housing Corporation has good network within the country, and they used to have what we call tenant purchase houses, site and service schemes.
Yes.
I've been talking to National Housing Corporation from 2012, telling them that I wanted to put low-cost housing in Isiolo town, And it seems that, they lack funds, and then also what we need to do, probably they should have what you call housing advisory services, maybe so that you put economists there.
Thank you.
Technical people.
Thank you.
So that, you open the doors for discussion.
Thank you, Hussein. And I think you're very animated this morning. You want to know how you can reach him as well. But let him answer your questions first. Then, of course, we can see how we can access him as well. But we have Ken as well, who's hanging on the line. Good morning, Ken, from Nandi.
Good morning, Debarl.
Morning to you. Have a question or contribution?
Yes, nimeifuatilia Debarl.
Yes.
Mazungumzo ambayo inaendelea kuhusu housing.
Yeah.
Ambayo nimeifuatilia sana, nikaona ya kwamba ni nzuri. Lakini shaka langu Mr. Debarl.
Yeah.
Since independence. Tulipochukua huru katika taifa letu la Kenya.
Yes.
Ukikuta mazingara ambao wananchi wetu huwa wanaishi mpaka wa leo. Hata utashangaa sana unaposikia kwamba wizara ambayo inahusika na housing inawekwa pesa kiasi hiyo. Lakini unapokuja pia mashinane ambao Wakenya wenyewe wanaishi, Mr. Debarl, utakuta nyumba ambao mwananchi mwenyewe bado anaishi nyumba ya nyasi. Bado unakuta pia nyumba ambao ni manyata ambao inabomwa mpaka juu. Pia Debarl, unapotembea katika maafisa wetu wa serikali ambao pia wa Mangereza, unakuta pia bado wanaishi kwa yale mazingara, manyumba ambao bado zinabomwa. Mimi nashindwa Mr. Debarl. Wizara ambayo inahusika na housing.
Thank you.
Since independence.
Yes.
Wakenya bado wanaishi kwa hiyo wale mazingara ambao si nyumba. Kuna nyumba ambayo nimeiangalia hapo nzuri sana ambayo imechengwa na Kenya Women.
Yeah.
Nyumba safi sana. Kuna Wakenya wengi ambao pia kuna manyumba ambayo zinakondeshwa. Unakuta nyumba inakondeshwa na shilingi 5,000 ama 10. Bia huyu Mkenya mwenyewe anatafuta shilingi 200 kwa siku. Sisi kama Wakenya ambao tuko chini sana kimaisha, tutakuja ishi nyumba nzuri lini?
Asante. And of course, that is Ken. He sounds really frustrated. It's a frustrated Kenyans. And of course, also on Twitter, we have people who have comments here and there. We have Governor the Dreamer saying that affordable housing brings stability, economic diversity, and improves the physical quality of the neighborhood. Also, we do have let taxes decide. He's asking, is the 15% tax on profit for developers building low-cost houses justified? How does a unit costing more millions be a low-cost house? Or is this an avenue for briefcase companies which will get government contracts for police and houses and the rest? Not pay tax? That is what let the tax or the taxes decide, is asking that question. Also, we have RK David asking, if government will want to realize the idea, buy a vast land, build affordable houses, set the pricing in equivalent to average rent paid by many Kenyans, and collect this revenue, this escalating debt will be a thing of the past. And we have Pascal as well, Kituku. He is asking, or he's saying, we have many slums in Nairobi which can assist in the housing agenda. If, for instance, government improves Kibera by building affordable apartments, it will house more than today. And I think also there has been an ongoing scheme on that in Kibera as well, upgrading the slum upgrading scheme that was started also in 2013 actually was started by the NAC administration, if you can remember, the former president, Mwai Kibaki as well. But briefly, you can comment on this, all of us, even as we are strapped for time, we can be also giving our closing remarks. I told you we cannot exhaustively on this forum discuss all these facets of issues, and I think there's a lot that we haven't done yet. But briefly, you can comment on what Hussein is asking, first of all, about the tenant purchase scheme from the government. What are some of the avenues that you do have, especially when we are rolling out these houses? Then do we have such a scheme like the TPS that will be very exceedingly beneficial for them when it comes to people who don't want to access mortgages as well?
So Debarl, Hussein's question on counties, it's important for us to say that housing is a devolved function. So we are working with counties, and each and every county we are giving, in this financial year, I'm disbursing 18 billion shillings to counties, to 59 cities in this country. What this money is going to be for is for them to be able to put up urban infrastructure that is going to support housing. And then that means then the private developers, when they come, the infrastructure is already there and they don't have to put up that infrastructure. We have also signed with counties. Today we have signed with 9, and 22 is waiting for me at the moment. And every county, they have committed to building 2,000 units for every county. So for Isiolo, Hussein, he'll be encouraged to know that there's 2,000 units every year for the next 5 years that are going to come from counties that we are providing. National Housing Corporation is a part and parcel of this conversation. We are restructuring it because at the moment it is, it is not well funded, and part of this housing fund is to enable them to be able to provide housing at the correct market. This National Housing Development Fund is going to run a national tenant purchase scheme. The issue of rural areas, as I think I've already addressed it.
Okay.
Prison and police housing. We need 130,000. We need 130,000 houses for police and prison. So again, that's a tall order, and that's why we need public-private partnerships.
Thank you.
To do the same. With respect to the 15% for the developers, that is actually a tax break because it used to be at 30%. And now we are saying if you develop just over 100, about 100 units, you qualify for a 15% tax as opposed to 30% corporate tax.
All right, and the TPS?
TPS is exactly what the fund, this 0.5% is actually going to be advancing tenant purchase scheme or rent to own.
All right.
So that's why I said that if you're a youngster, you're coming out of college, you can get a house at 600,000 or $1 million shilling, and you can pay it over 30 years.
Over 30 years, thank you.
That's a tenant purchase scheme.
Let's say from Mwangi as well, also your closing remarks, finally, as we're summing up, there's a lot we haven't really covered, but of course this also is for another day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was good that we came to have this discussion. I like what Ken has said about rural housing. I think that's where the focus also need to shift. This year around, we are planning to disburse about 2 billion shillings into rural housing, and we are talking about 20,000 households. We're looking at an average of home improvement, about 100,000 per home, and that will be able to address a part of what the government initiative is moving towards. I think this is the way to go. We can't keep talking about, the whole issue of talking about decent housing. It's like decent food.
Yes.
You can only talk about decent food if you have food in the first place.
It's true.
So I think there are people who do not have access to housing. I think we need to address that, and once we have addressed that, and I agree with the PS that there are very many, we are at different levels. I think there have to be many initiatives across the whole divide, both in the financial sector, in government, and just to summarize, the whole issue of RAD tenor in the rural area need to be addressed because there are many people who do not have titles.
Thank you.
And that need to be addressed.
Right. Let's leave it at that. Let's hear from also Sam, also your closing remarks very briefly.
Thank you. But as players in this industry, we invite the government through the CS to come to us and see what we are doing. And actually in the next 2 weeks, I'll be launching one of the projects. We've been doing it for the last 5 years.
Yes.
And actually, the government can benchmark with Urithi among other players because what we are doing, even the pricing that we are having, is what the government is proposing. And we are not just talking in terms of theories. We are doing it practically. So we invite the government to partner with us, support us, because again, when the government comes on board next year and other years, we might be, swallowed. So let them uplift us to where they want us to be.
Charles, of course, this is an upgraded version of Tunaomba Serikali. Right, your closing remarks, sir.
My closing remarks are, this is a moment and it's an appointment with destiny for this country. We have got to change the trajectory. Access to decent housing is a constitutional right. It is a tall order. We're talking about 2 million housing deficit. We need all hands on the deck and we need all solutions on the table. But Debarl, we have got to move out of boardrooms. We have got to move out of talk show. Yes. We have got to be on the ground. And there's a premium in getting started.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to announce to Kenyans that beginning next month, this affordable housing journey begins from a government perspective in terms of we are breaking ground with the first of the many projects. We have got about 59 projects that we have lined up in the new coming year. Which is going to give us about 167,000 units across the country.
Thank you.
And lastly, just to address my friend,
very briefly,
is that government is very supportive of private sector. Remember, the delivery model is private sector driven. And so what we are doing is that we're going to provide them with infrastructure for them to be able to provide housing. And this is their business. We're not in the business of taking them out of business.
Thank you very much. Ruth Odera, your closing remarks as well.
Thank you. I'm happy that the government has an integrated policy for housing. And while they are going into direct intervention and working with various key players, I'm hoping that they are also considering other partners that are more focused on rural housing, because that's where the majority of our people live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you so much, Charles Hinga Mwaura, who is the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, State Department for Housing and Urban Development. Also, I want to thank you, Samuel Maina, who is the chairman of Urithi Housing Cooperative Society Limited. Thank you for coming through this morning. Also want to thank you also Mwangi Gidaiga, who's the managing director of Kenya Women Finance Trust, Banking on Women. Thank you for coming through. And Ruth Odera, who is the regional director of Habitat for Humanity. We really do appreciate you coming through this morning as well. And look at how transformative this can be. If my director may just indulge me, just to show you this particular picture from my email. This is how it looked, the rural housing, right? This is a thatched house, just want to show you. Then it transformed. Look, the transformation. This is how it looks. And this is all in partnership of the PPP that of Habitat for Humanity is doing, and Kenya KWFT, and of course also other facets also from Urithi Housing as well. So you can transform your houses as well. Thank you very much for your valued company. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure that we have decent housing. Decent housing is your right as a Kenyan, and this is domiciled in the Constitution. My name is Debarl Inea.